Evaluating corporates is no longer just about their financial performance, but also on matters environment, social, and governance. You might have heard about the ESGs. So I'm going to be having a conversation with Loise Wangui, who's the Chief Officer Regulatory Affairs right here at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. She's going to tell us what are they telling corporates to do and incorporate for the evaluation right after her profile. Loise Wangui is the Chief Officer Regulatory Affairs at the NSE. She's a certified company secretary and a GRI certified sustainability professional. At the NSE, Loise is responsible for formulating and guiding the implementation of the strategic direction and objectives of the regulatory function of the NSE, leading the units of listings, market surveillance and compliance, financial and sustainability reporting with the objective of promoting ethics, fairness and transparency in the trading of securities and quality of listings on the NSE. Loise has a wealth of legal and finance professional experience spanning over 14 years, having worked previously in a top-tier law firm in Kenya before joining the NSE, where she has risen through the ranks to head the regulatory affairs function. Loise holds a master's in law in public finance and financial services law from the University of Nairobi and a bachelor's law degree from the same university. She is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya with active membership in the Law Society of Kenya and the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investments and the Institute of Certified Secretaries. Most recently, Loise led the design and development of the first ESG disclosure guidance manual for listed companies in Kenya and is an active contributor to the sustainable growth agenda through think tanks and thought leadership. Loise Wangui, many thanks for joining us on the Trading Bell.
Thank you for having me.
So Loise, I would like to start this conversation by asking you to just help us with the definitives, because we're talking environmental, social, governance. What are you looking at for corporates to report on when it comes to matters environment, just going directly to the social and governance itself? Let's start with the environment. What are you looking at?
So on the environment, it basically speaks to climate change and what a company is doing in driving low carbon emissions, as well as, a climate resilient company.
Excellent.
So its contribution to the environment and the planet in general.
Lovely. What about the social aspect of it?
The social speaks to the people. The people, the communities where a company operates in, and the impact it has on its people, employees, the staff, as well as the communities in which it operates. So positive and negative impacts and how those are mitigated. Okay,
and finally, this term, the governance part of it, what is it?
The governance, I would say, is the foundation of it all. It's how basically a company is run. Governance refers to how a company is directed, piloted, and held accountable. It speaks to accountability, direction, control, and all that, board and everything.
Excellent. And, as I have just introduced there, we have seen a new phenomenon of corporates really being evaluated in a different way, and you'll be helping us understand that. But first, in November 2021, the NSE launched the Environmental, Social and Governance Disclosures Guidance Manual. What does this launch mean for companies in Kenya, as well as the country, from a sustainability perspective?
Thank you, Maina.
Yeah.
And indeed, like you put it, there is a shift in how investors assess corporate performance.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, it's been based on financial performance, which answers the question for shareholders.
Yeah.
But now there's other stakeholders who are looking at companies in a different way, bringing in the non-financial assessment of the softer issues on the impacts the company is having on the environment, the society, as well as its governance structures. So there's that whole shift towards assessing of how a company performs. And investors are very keen on these factors because I think there is a shift now to long-term value that the company is bringing to all these stakeholders. So like you put it, in November of 2021, we put out an ESG, Environmental Social Governance Disclosures Guidance Manual. As the words say, it's a guidance manual. It's a how-to document on how companies, listed or unlisted, can actually start their journey towards integrating ESG into their operations, and all the way towards disclosing their ESG performance using an international standard that is internationally acceptable.
Wow.
I think what this meant for Kenya is that Kenya is a thought leader in the sustainability aspect of it. And This came just after the CBK had put out the guidelines on climate risk management. And as you know, Kenya has a national policy on climate finance.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole shift towards green economy and, climate resilient, low carbon, and building a resilient infrastructure for Kenya. So these guidelines put Kenya at that place. Yes.
That's very good. In fact, somebody maybe would be asking out there, what's the difference? We hear ESG's sustainability goals. I mean, is there any difference, or are they all intermarried in some way?
SDGs,
yes.
or like you said,
yes.
Sustainable Development Goals,
yes.
are all geared towards leading to a sustainable development agenda. So ESG is more, I would say, more elaborate. And I think the phrase or the initials ESG are more relatable because they speak to the very aspects of environmental, social, and governance in a clear-cut way. Other than just saying sustainability. And in the long term, it's all geared towards the sustainability agenda of a company. Yeah.
Well put and fair enough. Now, so according to a survey by Ernst & Young conducted among institutional investors, over 98% of investors are signaling a move towards more disciplined and rigorous approach, as you've just rightfully put it, just evaluating companies from not just the financial aspect of it. And so the question is, how can companies then use the recently launched guidelines that you've talked about to enhance their appeal amongst investors? Because I know there are many of them who are watching and saying, okay, we would love to get onboarded.
And I'm happy that the investors are actually leading this dialogue.
Lovely.
Particularly because I think this agenda has gained traction the way it has gained because there's a demand by the investor for long-term value. Or even investing and actually doing good while actually making money. And investing in companies that are deliberate and they are conscious towards making change, and impactful change for that matter, in the society and in the environment and the planet that we are all operating, and in its people as well. So this shift has really helped. And the guidelines, as they are very elaborate, very granular. Like I said, it's a how-to document. So what it does, it sets step-by-step measures on how to start to end the integration, the measuring, all the way to the, the reporting of ESG performance by a listed or a non-listed company. So any company wanting to start the journey of ESG integration is advised actually to read the ESG guidance manual by the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and that will be, it's a manual, like we say. It's a guide. It will
so it's actually accessible to non-listed companies as well.
It is.
That's what you've said.
It is.
I know they need to invest into getting that manual, but let's just give them a tidbit. Just give me one example of something they will find in. I think you've already elaborated the process, but what is it, one thing you could say that, is a gist to the taste of the manual?
I think what any company or even any practitioner in the sustainability space would find there is how to set your governance structures right for sustainability purposes. How to map out your stakeholders and actually prioritize them based on the mapping that you'll go through, as well as the materiality analysis process that comes from the feedback you receive from your stakeholders, as well as how do you develop the content of a sustainability report. The manual has all that. Starting from, the framework to apply all the way until, finally coming up with a report, as well as even how to carry out your assurance and your audit of your report. And like I say, it's a step-by-step guide on the whole entire process from integration to ESG performance disclosure.
And by the way, does this also apply to SMEs? Can they take something out of that?
Absolutely.
People
have believed, or there has been sentiments that ESG or this kind of reporting is just for the big boys, and that's not so. Startups, actually any business that wants to be resilient into the future, these are deliberate things it must do. It must look at how it impacts society, the environment, and the governance structures it has put in, and integrate all that into its sustainability and sustainability strategies to actually go ahead. And so startups can.
I have seen over time companies coming here and doing even a report, I mean, which is quite commendable. That means they are already into it. And, you know, I have seen you also doing the capacity training that you have been talking about. Would you care to mention to our viewers an example or two of some of these corporates that are already embracing this, so that at least our viewers can see this is real things in action?
Thank you. I started by saying that Kenya is a thought leader in matters sustainability.
Absolutely.
And actually reporting of ESG performance or sustainability reporting by listed or even non-listed companies started way before even the NSE put out the ESG guidance manual. We have listed companies like Safaricom that started their reporting 10 years back. And you know, it's been a learning process. And we also learned something even when we're putting up the manual for others. We have companies like East African Breweries that put out their ESG report in 2021. And also think in 2020, as well as Kakuzi, the latest entrant, in 2021 as well. So I think we are seeing traction. We're also seeing a lot of progress in that whole area.
Excellent. I think I've seen them live doing that. Let's talk about now matters to do with index, because I've heard some good rumor about it, and you will help us understand. So ESG reporting needs traction. Yes, definitely here in the country, as you've seen, we're on the move. Are there plans to have a sustainability index sort of at the NSE? Because, you know, at the NSE we talk about matters index. Is there something like that?
Actually, there is.
Wow.
As reporting becomes, you know, more frequent and also standardized, there are plans by the NSE to eventually have an ESG, or what we'll call a responsible investing index. So it's an index where, you know, the highest companies in rating on ESG matters are actually ranked. It's a way to differentiate, to allow those companies to differentiate themselves, to be seen, as well as to attract the, you know, the investor capital that they may be looking out for, targeted for impact investing. So there are plans in the near future as reporting becomes more frequent and standardized.
Great, we're looking forward to it. So now, you know, the World Bank estimates that the country's infrastructure funding gap is approximately about 1.8 billion USD. It also noted that the country needs to have an annual spend rate that requires an annual spend of about 4 billion USD, which is quite a huge gap when it comes to matters infrastructure, and the deficit is quite humongous. And one of the ways of funding this is purely through the bond market. And so when we're talking about ESGs, definitely the question would be, is there an opportunity to leverage on green bonds? And I'm saying this, and I know my viewers will be asking, what are those? I'd want you to start first from telling us, what are green bonds? And then now we can talk about leveraging on them.
All right.
Yeah.
Just by simple explanation, green bonds are conventional bonds. The distinguishing aspect of a green bond are the green aspects of the bond, particularly in alignment to the green principles, particularly on the use of proceeds, the management of proceeds, and the reporting of the use of those proceeds. So green bonds proceeds are specifically only used in green projects. And there's a whole verification that goes into knowing what is green investments and all that. So the target for green bonds is environmental. It's in projects that have an environmental positive impact. So that's the only differentiation between a conventional bond
and a green
bond.
So then let's talk about now the opportunity to leverage on that. So corporates, should they open up their eyes to leverage on it?
There's a huge infrastructure financing gap in Kenya and in Africa in general. And as you've seen governments do, there's a lot of reliance on commercial bank lending and also the exchequer. So there's a lot of pressure on public funds. That means there is room for the private sector to come in through issuance of green bonds, or even the government as a sovereign itself to issue a green bond and attract institutional and retail investors who are keen to do good and actually to grow a green economy, while actually they give the money to the government to do its infrastructure, to fill its infrastructure funding gaps. So all I can say is that there's a room. The national government has made progress, which is very commendable, towards issuance of a sovereign green bond.
Wow.
We hope to see it in the near term. And I think what that will do for Kenya, it will actually put Kenya as a sustainability, the map of a sustainability hubs in Africa.
Wow.
An issuance of a sovereign green bond will actually put Kenya at the top of the map as a sustainability hub in Africa.
Wow.
So it's very welcome for the government to be doing this.
Wow, this is lovely, and we certainly hope to keep leading it from the front. You know, we have come to the end of this conversation, but I would want you to really endear corporates, businesses, and everybody else that it's time they started thinking, if they have not started, on matters ESG. So I'd like you to sort of give us a parting shot. What would you tell a room full of business leaders, people who are starting businesses, what did you tell them when it comes to them really jump-starting this conversation?
I think I want to say that sustainability is a journey.
Yeah.
The reporting aspect of it is the tail end of that journey.
Yeah.
This journey starts with a decision by the top level management of a company to actually want to do good, to have positive impacts in society and the environment they operate in, and to their people. Once that decision is made, how the company will perceive the whole agenda on sustainability will determine whether sustainability will be a competitive edge for it.
Wow.
So if the tone is well set, the strategies are put in place, the investors are out looking, and they will be happy to buy such kind of stocks, because such companies will be well-run companies, and well-run companies are good stocks to buy.
Wow, powerful. Thank you so much for that. And by the way, Loise, I know you write a lot about matters ESG and sustainability. Where can people find your articles and keep reading about this?
I write for the Business Daily as a passion.
Yeah.
And I want to just do my part in pass the message on the why this is very critical at a time like this.
All right.
So I encourage people to read my articles on the Business Daily as and when I write, as well as check them out on my LinkedIn, which is Loise Wangui Musyoka.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and keep teaching us, keep teaching corporates to think matters ESG. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's Loise Wangui, Chief Officer, Regulatory Affairs, talking matters ESG and why we need to start thinking much about the environment, social and governance disclosures for corporates. If they're thinking about running beyond just their short timelines, they need to think matters ESG. Thank you so much for your time. This is The Trading Bell.